we need to be in a position where women have the right to choose what's right for them, and that's at the top of the list for me.
Steph Curry is in hot water with some Christians because he decided to endorse Kamala Harris as president because she is pro-women's right to delete babies.
Wow.
Now, the issue here is Steph Curry has been a long time openly professing Christian. Now, I think Steph has some other weird political views that have been kind of wonky, economic policy, stuff like that, social issues. This is by far the most egregious. Okay, so let's first look at the clip, and then I'm going to help you guys to understand how someone comes to these conclusions, okay, and how we should engage with them and how we shouldn't engage with them, okay? So go ahead and play this.
What's up, everybody? Stephen Curry here.
So first of all, this is one of those things that I was talking about. Like, why are you at the DNC?
I think his video is at the DNC.
Huh?
His video is at the DNC, but it's for the DNC. So
He's at the DNC.
I
right?
guess. Yeah, I guess.
Like you're putting your flag.
Yeah, you are at the DNC.
You're at the DNC.
You're digitally at the DNC, yeah,
right?
Sure.
So for me, like this is one of those, like, you are choosing to be extremely partisan in this very tumultuous season that we're going through.
Were you invited to the RNC?
I was not invited to the RNC, but I probably wouldn't have gone. You
I'm
know,
glad I'm not getting these emails.
State Warriors, but man, what a great honor it was to represent Team USA and go out there and win that gold medal at the Olympics this summer. And that unity on.
listen. I think basketball is amazing. I'm gonna go see LeBron and Bronny play. But why are we acting like America winning a gold medal for basketball?
It's surprising.
Is like something to brag about. Steph, stop it, dog.
I think the biggest finesse that the U.S. ever pulled off was somehow getting basketball in the Olympics, because that is just like, let's get all the best NBA players and put them on one team.
Hilarious. Go ahead.
Off the court reminded us all that together we can do all things and continue to inspire the world. That's why I believe that Kamala, as president, could bring that unity back and continue to move our country forward.
Wow.
Pull up the quote. So this is Steph Curry, says women's right to choose is a top issue for supporting Harris. Where's the actual quote? Curry, I see it right there,
I think that's
pointed to a woman's right to choose at the top as of his list of issues going into the presidential election.
Understanding, like, we need to be in a position where women have the right to choose what's right for them, and that's at the top of the list for me. I have amazing women in my life who've been a huge inspiration to me.
Steph Curry's married with kids. Why is his top issue a woman's right to delete a baby? Endorsing Kamala is important for me and my family, he said. I just know from especially women's rights and thinking about what's at stake with this election and understanding, like, we need to be in a position where women have the right to choose what's right for them. And that's at the top of my list for me. I have amazing women in my life who've been a huge inspiration to me. Okay. A grown married man with kids thinks that women's rights to choose is at the top of the list for me. Now, how does someone come to these conclusions who's a Christian? This has a lot to do, in my opinion, with this idea of worldview. Someone can believe in Jesus but not have a Jesus-centered worldview. And worldview is going to come down to something very, very essential. Worldview is going to come down to narrative. And so the stories you believe are going to drive the paradigm and the lens at which you look at the world through. With Steph Curry, it's ironic enough that he himself was almost deleted.
really.
Look it up.
Oh my.
Sonya Curry opens up on considering the deletion of Steph while pregnant with him.
Yo.
So if there's anyone that would be like, no, we should prevent this because I'm here.
Yeah. Hello.
Even if my mom felt like it, I wish she wouldn't have had the option to.
Yeah.
Right?
Hello.
This is so again. But how does someone come to this conclusion? It's based on a narrative. So if you keep telling yourself that the 0.0% of women that experience an awful and tragic event like incest or rape need this as a right, and you ignore the 99% of women who do this out of inconvenience for their own self-actualization, and you think that point should make up, right? That is a narrative that you create for yourself. That's a story you tell yourself. And then you feel like anyone that's pro-life is telling an opposite story and is an oppressive bigot. What is the stories you're telling yourself? right? And so there's going to be a lot of Christians that are going to think you're fringe or you're far right because you just simply say, I don't think a woman should be able to delete her own baby, right? The tension is, how do you view that person and how do you engage with that person as a brother in Christ? And I think, I'm not saying Steph is not a Christian. I think he's deceived and he's wrong.
Yeah.
But I think you could be wrong and still love Jesus. Now, if he was any sort of church that had some sort of discipleship and connection and correction, someone would probably pull him to the side and be like, bro, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Like, you're not even, first of all, you're a man with kids and a wife.
Yes. You should be the most aware of what a deletion of a baby actually does.
Second of all, you almost were deleted yourself. Okay. Now again, to be fair to Steph, I found this very interesting. We just went through this in the story of Solomon. Okay. Solomon, wisest man that ever lived, asked God to ask for anything. I'll give you whatever you want. Solomon asks for wisdom. God blesses him. He becomes wise. He governs well. All of these things are awesome. Now, towards the end of Solomon's life, we hope and believe that Solomon repented. That's kind of the tone of Ecclesiastes. He wrote that at the end. But towards the end of his life, you see Solomon completely unraveling, right? And you see this in 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 1, how King Solomon, and by the way, I'm not saying that Steph is in sin in this way. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is Solomon went all the way off the rails because he loved many foreign women besides Pharaoh's daughters. They were from the nations about which the Lord had told not the Israelites, you must not intermarry with them because they will surely turn your hearts after their gods. Nevertheless, Solomon held fast to them in love. He had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines, and his wives led him astray. Okay, so my pastor talked about how power, sex tends to lead people astray. In this context, Solomon is a king. In Deuteronomy, it says kings shouldn't have many wives. So Solomon's going in direct opposition to what kings should do.
Hello.
Right? As Solomon grew old, his wives turned his heart after other gods, and his heart was not fully devoted to the Lord, his God, as the heart of David's, his father was. He followed Ashtoreth, the goddess of the Sidonians, and Molech, the detestable god of the Amorites. Now, if anyone knows anything about Molech, right? So Solomon did evil in the eyes of the Lord. He did not follow the Lord completely as David his father did.
Do you know what Molech translates to in the Greek?
What is it?
Planned Parenthood. Not actually, but
no.
But kind of.
So what? Well, who was the god of Molech?
The one you would sacrifice all the babies to?
The one you would sacrifice the babies to. So again, I'm not saying Solomon is literally out here sacrificing babies.
Yes.
That is or excuse me, or Seth is doing this. Or Seth has some secret life and that's why he went like that. I'm not saying any of that. I'm telling you guys, if Solomon, the wisest man who ever lived,
he's got scripture.
He wrote Proverbs. He wrote Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
He wrote Song of Solomon. If Solomon drifts at the end of his life because he has power, because there's a different narrative and a different worldview he starts seeing the world through, and then in that, his heart drifts. What do you think a basketball player like Steph Curry is susceptible to? Steph Curry is not Solomon. I'm not Solomon. You're not Solomon.
It's like a moral lifestyle creep.
It's a worldview creep. It's not. I'm not even saying this. It's like Seth could be living the same life you and me living. He could be loving his wife, leading his household, giving to his church, reading his Bible.
Yeah.
But it's a worldview creep. The narratives and the stories you tell yourself slowly drift, and then you find yourself as a grown man with kids, almost been deleted yourself saying stuff like women's rights to kill babies is a good thing, and that's the biggest thing. And by the way, to Steph's credit, what is the number one accomplishment that everyone claims for Kamala Harris? She's a great advocate for women's bodies.
Yeah.
So what else is there to say?
Yeah.
We need you to come to this DNC convention and say something good about her. What is there to say? There's, she's great for women's bodies and women's rights. And so I think Steph is deceived, unfortunately. I wish there were people in Steph's life that could push back gently without saying he's a wolf in sheep's clothing and that he's an apostate and all these sorts of things. And I think as Christians, you and I have these people in our lives. I had a close friend of mine that sat me down because I was pro-life and told me he thought I was on the fringe right because I took a very reasonable pro-life position. Anybody who watches my content knows I'm not on the far right. So when you have these sorts of folks in your life, don't be shocked that people have this weird worldview drift. Don't be shocked at that. This is prevalent. This happens to people who wrote scripture, right? And so sometimes we think we're ahead, or we're better than the folks in the Bible, right? So we have friends like Steph. Steph is just an avatar for the people you and I have in our real life. And those people still need to be loved, respected, honored, but they also need to be told the truth and corrected. Your worldview, fam, has drifted. Now, if he wants to vote for Harris because whatever issue he has, fine. But voting for Harris on the presupposition that women who can be boss babes, who can run Fortune 500 companies, who can be entrepreneurs, who can be independent and do all these things, that these same women can't track their cycles, can't use protection, can't do basic stuff, that and I'm talking about the 98% that use the deletion of babies as a straight convenience, out of convenience. I'm not talking about the two. If we could agree, if me and Steph and Harris and can we agree that the 98% of deletions of babies should be banned? That the 98% that are done out of sheer convenience should be banned. If we could agree on that, then we could talk about the 2% that's the exception to the rule. But the issue isn't even that, because the framing and the narrative and the worldview behind it creates a subtle drift where you miss your own context. And Solomon missed his own context. And unfortunately, I think Steph, who I believe is still a Christian, because I don't think you lose your salvation for thinking wrong things. I don't think you lose your salvation for saying wrong things. Right? I think Steph is still a Christian, but Steph needs to be gently corrected. Not told he's a wolf, not told I can't believe you're not a Christian, you're an idiot, you're stupid, because we see Solomon worshiping the god of Molech, who they offered living babies outside of the womb to. That's crazy. And ultimately, by the way, I don't think Steph is going to sway this election. I don't think Steph Curry, I don't think anyone's voting for Kamala because Steph's going to sway this election. You know what's going to sway this election is if Trump makes a dummy of himself on this next debate stage. If Trump contains himself and maneuvers carefully, I think Harris loses because Harris is a bad politician. I think they're being appropriated and exploited, honestly. I think they're being finessed into aligning with something that they don't even practice or endorse in their own life. Because I highly doubt that Steph and his wife, maybe I'm just being too charitable, would ever encourage anyone in their own life to go and delete a baby, considering he himself was almost terminated. And so that's my position here. Now, if he continues on in some of this foolishness, do I then, oh my God, am I then concerned for his soul? Yeah, I am. But this is the first instance, maybe the second instance I've seen of saying and doing some goofy stuff like this. So, hey, pray for Steph Curry. Pray for your friends that hold some of these positions. Some of you guys watch this channel and you're triggered right now. How dare you, Ruslan? How dare you as a man, as a white cisgendered man, say anything about women's bodies? Hush. Hush. The vast majority of pro-life activists are women. And a lot of them are my friends. And a lot of them keep telling me to speak up on this issue. Because a lot of you guys have an incongruent, incoherent worldview where you believe God is the author and the creator of life, but you think it's okay for women to be out of their self-actualization because of their own whatever dreams they have and how much a baby completely ruins your life. And anyone who's had a baby, even in unfortunate and tough circumstances, knows how much of a blessing kids are, even when your season of life may be hard. So miss me with that. Miss me with that. All right. Yeah, definitely. Tiny body inside the body. Tiny human inside of a human. Tiny human who should have rights. Whose rights to live should supersede your right to kill him or her. Not to mention how many women who are in another woman's bodies get killed because, I can't finish my fill in the blank, my aspirations, my dreams, my goals. And I say this, and I don't mean to be callous. I don't mean to be mean. But if you're looking at this from a pragmatic, what is the lesser of two evils? What's the lesser of two evils? A woman's right to self-actualization being removed, or a baby's life in the womb being removed. I'm not talking biblically. I'm talking pragmatically. If you're looking at this from the lesser of two evils, I am fine with a woman's right to self-actualization usurping, coming underneath someone's right to live from a strictly pragmatic standpoint. Not to mention how our declining birth rates are already causing a massive massive impact on our society as a whole, globally speaking. And I'm just talking pragmatically. We've already talked about how Christians are called to protect the vulnerable and the marginalized, to call to protect those who can't speak for themselves, to be a voice for the voiceless. Who's more voiceless and who's more vulnerable and who's more marginalized than unborn babies? Hey, thank you so much for checking out the video. Comment down below and let me know what you think. And be sure to check out this video that YouTube is recommending just for you. Let me know if they nailed it. All right? I'll see you over there. Peace.